So hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our HashiCorp webinar, where today we'll be exploring our latest managed services that are available on AWS. My name is Connor Beechinor. I'll be your moderator for this session, and today I'm delighted to welcome two speakers. Firstly, we have John Buero, who is a channel solutions engineer here at HashiCorp. And today he's joined by our special guest, Siva Sadhu, who's a senior partner solutions architect at AWS. In terms of the agenda, we'll start with a general overview of HashiCorp, and we'll then hear from Siva about AWS's view of the world and how we're working together. Following that, we'll get into the specific products that are now available as a service, and we'll ultimately summarize how these differ from the open source tools. We'll then wrap up with a live Q&A. So if you do have any questions throughout the session, please post them in the chat and we'll answer those at the end. Please note this webinar is also being recorded and we'll be able to share that with everyone by email. That normally takes a day or two. So with that, over to you, John.
Yes, hello everybody, thank you. I'm just, let me back up 1 second. Just here to introduce you, maybe if you're new to the HashiCorp tools, we have a full set now of 8 projects, some of them open source only, some of them open source and enterprise offerings. Also a thorough breakdown between tools and services. So I'll describe which of these we're now offering as a service with our great relationship with AWS. But first, again, let Siva introduce himself and some of the new AWS offerings. So go ahead, Siva. And I'll stop sharing here a second.
Hello, everyone. I'm Siva Sadhu, Partner Solutions Architect at AWS. I work with ISV customers and partners across the EMEA region. AWS has the most extensive global infrastructure spanning 81 availability zones across 25 geographic regions, with plans to launch 18 more availability zones and 6 more AWS regions in Australia, India, Indonesia, Spain, Switzerland, and the United Arab Emirates. Customers are choosing AWS because it provides the broadest set of capabilities of any cloud provider. And AWS has been continually expanding its services to support virtually any cloud workload, and it now has more than 200 featured services. So let's look at the multiple steps towards achieving your intended business outcomes with AWS. Today, I will focus on ensuring security and adopting modern application development. As we always say, security is job zero at AWS. I would like to emphasize on the shared responsibility model here for a moment. We look after the security of the cloud and customers look after the security in the cloud. What do we mean by that? By security of the cloud, AWS is responsible for protecting the infrastructure that runs all of the services offered in the AWS cloud. This infrastructure is composed of the hardware, software, networking, and facilities that run the AWS cloud services. And security in the cloud, which is a customer responsibility, it will be determined by the AWS cloud services that a customer selects. This also determines the amount of configuration work the customer must perform as part of their security responsibilities. For example, services such as Amazon Elastic Compute Cloud or Amazon EC2, Virtual Private Cloud, and Amazon S3 are categorized as infrastructure as service and as such require the customer to perform all of the necessary security configuration and management tasks. AWS also provides managed services across the spectrum of identity and access management, threat detection, infrastructure protection, like firewalls and AWS Shield, for protecting your data that is stored on AWS, any of AWS services, tools to respond to incidents, and a service to look at the compliance and compliance artifacts. Let me switch gears to modern application development practices here. We have seen customers adopt modern application development practices since they provide opportunities to be more agile, efficient, and lower their costs. During modernization, decentralizing development and release processes presents a new set of challenges. Maintaining a release process and quality and consistency across all the teams or all the services becomes difficult. Standardizing and automating the software delivery process helps overcome this challenge. And when teams have the authority to move fast, they can release new features continuously, often several times a day. AWS provides tools for developers and operators to increase their speed and agility and also improve the quality of their code. We can see AWS provides the broader set of tools for developers and operators, right from authoring the code to source code and artifact management, to build, test, and deploy lifecycle of applications and infrastructure, and beyond that, for monitoring applications after they are in production. I would also like to talk about my AWS partner network here. We have the AWS ecosystem as the largest global community of customers and partners. The AWS partner network includes some of the largest ISVs or independent software vendors that integrate into our platform, to those that have built their platform on top of AWS. The AWS Marketplace makes it easy to one-click deploy software and solutions they need to build and run their businesses. Marketplace also simplifies licensing and billing for customers. With that, I would like to hand it over to our partner HashiCorp today. And John, over to you.
Thank you, Siva. Yes, and everything you see listed on the AWS site is fully well supported with our alliance with AWS. So if you're using the Terraform provider, if you're using some of the new features in HashiCorp Cloud Platform I'm discussing today, all of that is already supported by Terraform, by both the AWS and the HashiCorp side. So it's a great relationship. Now, there we go, back on track. If you have talked about software development lifecycle with someone at Hashi in the last year or two, there's a few versions of this we've done. And if you've talked with Arman Dadgar, one of our co-founders, there's the cycle of development, right? Obviously the build time, build test, deploy, execute, right? And this tends to be the way that we go now. In a linear fashion, really it is a loop, but you're starting with one or more machine images, maybe artifacts you need to maintain and automate, ideally with infrastructure as code. You deploy that into not just a cloud, sometimes a hybrid cloud, right? And we'll talk about how Terraform can be used to not just deploy complex resources in AWS, but also update local resources to reflect that. We have to do that securely, and that's where we introduce our Vault Secret Manager. And then once that's deployed securely, we need to be able to connect it, right? And one thing you'll find is if you line each of these up with a product, and we're talking about Terraform here, remember that Terraform is just a tool, right? So Terraform, you use it to stand up some resources. Who knows if those resources stay running, right? In fact, if you accidentally deploy with a spot instance, your instance will disappear eventually, right? Terraform won't know about that. So we use Consul here for service discovery and networking. And it's a great way to babysit your deployment. Once it's up and running, make sure it stays up and running and notifies you when some things go down. So all this enables you to get up into a complicated environment at runtime with a complex arrangement, resources codependent, whether they're on-premise in a private data center, co-located, or tied to direct resources in AWS, right? So obviously this tends to be the core problem that most of our customers have when they come to us. All of these different tools and processes are slowing us down. Usually they're not interoperable. Somebody may have a mixed bag of solutions for this problem. So let me start at the base then with machine image again. And this is one of our tool projects, right? So if you used HashiCorp Packer, it's really our second project after Vagrant. It was our first project written in Go. And since every project is written in Go, it's for optimized and streamlined experience. So you take your applications, artifacts, what have you. If you're using a lift and shift kind of migration, if you're talking about traditional VM deployments and things that aren't quite ready to be cloud native, Packer is for you, right? Packer will help you maintain these images and these complex lists of images in a way that is hybrid cloud ideal, right? So you have the same description of an image you want to deploy, building on VMware, building locally in Kubernetes as building in AWS, right? Now, again, Packer is just a tool, but what we'll talk about next later on when we get to the HashiCorp Cloud Platform is that we're finally enabling people to have an image registry with this. So we're, rather than package some of our tools as an enterprise offering and give you an enterprise tool, oftentimes we'll actually build an enterprise platform around our tools to help make your life easier. And that's what we've just announced with Packer. So if you're a user of Packer, stick around and we'll talk about the new features with HCP. Okay. Again, once I've got that image, I need to deploy it. I will be using Terraform for my infrastructure. And obviously, I'm probably not just deploying an image. I may be deploying some VPCs or some firewall rules, security groups, or a complex route or VPC peering. Now, when I do this, I might want some on-premise resource again to know about that. So as an effect of changing a security group or changing a load balancer, most commonly, I may need to reflect that locally in an on-premise environment or in some resource that I have locally. We have a new Cisco sync feature as well. We have a great relationship with Cisco. So if your Cisco networking needs to reflect your Terraform and synchronize with your Terraform, we have great integrations with that as well. In fact, I wish I could expand on this whole block. We have lots of vendor integrations, and it's great that you can then go deploy a cloud native database solution, something that AWS manages for you, something that has the perfect performance you need, but also utilize it locally with an application that isn't ready for the cloud yet, or either isn't ready for the cloud yet, or is run in a secure data center somewhere that needs to be run on your own hardware. So all of this ties together really nicely. And we'll talk a little bit about how this enterprise offering, again, Terraform was a tool, enterprise is a platform around the tool. So we'll talk about Terraform Cloud in a little bit as well. Okay, so if I keep going up the chain, I'm going into the security side. I need to discuss Vault. And if you've never used our HashiCorp Vault before, this is the creme de la creme of our products in my mind. So HashiCorp takes this extrapolation of static to dynamic world. Things will change day to day. You know, your IP address may be dynamic by the hour. Your roles, your routes, your applications, especially with autoscale groups, may change fairly regularly. But nobody thinks about changing and rotating secrets, right? So passwords, credentials, and this is, as Siva said, security is number zero, or job number zero, right? This is the most important part. Nobody wants to go deploy some Terraform carelessly and then suddenly expose a cloud database to the public, right? That's the quickest way to wind up in the newspapers the next day. So Vault takes that dynamic approach, just like a DHCP server will give you an IP address, good for 1 hour, good for 1 day, whatever lease time you specify, up to a maximum renewed lease time of a week, whatever you specify, and then generically makes that available to secrets. So give me an IAM credential, give me something for an automation pipeline, a CI/CD job to deploy some resources. As soon as that's done, revoke that credential. So if somebody gets my logs, it's no longer valid, right? That's the first way to get some ransomware on top of your cloud or on top of your local resources, is to have a stale credential in a log. Now, again, it's hybrid focused, right? So we can use Vault to do everything from manage keys for storage pools. We do use Vault as KMIP to encrypt your VMware storage. We have plugins for Kubernetes. So say authenticate me via service account. If I'm using local Kubernetes or AKS, EKS, all of it's good. We have a full list, which I could just spend a whole hour on Vault alone with integrations. But again, all of them are fully compatible with AWS. And when I get into the HCP, HashiCorp Cloud Platform discussions later, we'll find that AWS is the only cloud actually currently supported by HCP. I should say the first cloud supported by HCP. So if you want to try out Vault and you maybe have been a little bit cautious, maybe you have a small team and you're not sure about the complications of managing your own Vault or dealing with enterprise sales if you're talking about enterprise value, now HCP will let you stand up a Vault in AWS fully supported, and it will be built up based on usage. So there's no stress for it. If you have a small group, you don't pay very much to use Vault. It's great. Okay. Now going back up that stack originally, we talked about security. Now we're going into networking. And if you're a network specialist, I fully admit I'm not, but one thing that we've seen is this last couple of maybe decade or decade and a half, this trend of SDN, software-defined networking. Obviously, networking has become very complicated in a cloud world, right? And again, when you keep security in mind, you want to ensure that you keep your network as simple as possible, but while also being as secure as possible. So Consul has this great evolution over time, right? Consul started out as service discovery, so we're going to effectively make an agent-based load balancer reporting service that will say, yes, my services are running, and here's the heartbeat, here's how often I check those, and that covers legacy services, VMs, bare metal, containers, etc. Now we've evolved and added features to Consul over time to now make it a full service mesh tool, right? So we have Consul doing your service discovery, again, in a hybrid cloud world. So maybe you have a local application that's monitoring your maybe a Lambda middleware service or again, a database somewhere in AWS. If that database changes, maybe you do some Terraform and apply a change to that, and your application isn't fully aware of that, there's no synchronization going on, your application will be disconnected, right? Consul is there to say, oh yes, this service is still here, it has moved, right? So you think of Consul being service discovery, a DNS evolution as well. And now with the mesh, we have the further step of ensuring that that service is trusted, right? So you have an intention-based whitelisting as opposed to firewalls where rules may change for IPs may change every hour. Consul is service level permissions, right? So service A is allowed to talk to database B. And the beauty of that is that when you enable that, not only do you not have to worry about the IP, which might not exist or might change, you also get automatic encryption end to end, right? So Consul will do that mutual TLS automatically between client and server. So this is a great way to ensure that connections between private data center and cloud are not just trusted, but are also encrypted. And encrypted so much so that your own peers cannot intercept that traffic. So we talk about zero trust networking at HashiCorp. This is our key for that. And again, we have integrations with F5, so that maybe you have an external egress or some on-premise load balancer, I should say ingress, sorry. If you need to synchronize some of that existing enterprise hardware you have, or maybe a Palo Alto deployment, all of this works together. So if you update a feature in the cloud, synchronizes locally with your on-premise environment without doing a Terraform run, right? Really handy. So consider Consul your babysitter after a Terraform job is finished. Make sure that everything stays consistent. Okay. So what about open source versus enterprise, right? So here we have the Gopher, the Gopher, I suppose. Open source solutions are often just tools, right? In fact, early versions of our Vault and Consul products didn't even have a UI in the open source. The UI was enterprise only. So we view the open source solutions as bare minimum, right? You get a little bit of confusion around the support for open source. I talked about tools and services, right? So things like Vault, Consul, those are services, those aren't tools. What you won't find in those is multi-tenant solutions, right? So things like namespaces, things like segmented networks. If you want to have a different data center, talk to a different data center, or a different cloud region, talk to a different on-premise data center, right? These are enterprise features. So open source is great for a small team to get up and running. Open source in the case of tools like Terraform and Packer is a great way to try something out. Say you're working with a small team, maybe 3 people. You can demonstrate a deployment into AWS with Terraform. That's well and good. What happens when you have to interact with other teams, right? Or what happens when you have a manager that needs some visibility into what you're doing? You don't want a state file or some lack of audit trail that's sitting on a laptop in a coffee shop. Some enterprises will require, well, most enterprises will require an audit trail of that and a full supportable solution, right? So while it's great to get up and running with our open source offerings, and also great to customize, we have a lot of community contributions and a lot of, again, alliance contributions from like our AWS partners. We also then find people run into this issue, right? So open source does not provide disaster recovery. There's no team collaboration or multi-tenancy. There's no namespaces as such. There's no real central pane of glass, I guess, single pane of glass, and also no SLA, right? So if you call us for open source, we're not able to help. So people often scaffold or build their own solutions around our open source tools, and that's fine. The tricky part is if again, someone calls for support around something that you've built that's not easily supported by us, right? We're not going to know exactly what you're doing. So enterprise, and again, I like to divide them into tools and services. If you're using one of our enterprise tools, it's often built with a platform around that tool. So we'll talk about Terraform Cloud, hosting all your versions of Terraform in a central place. And if you talk about the services, Vault will give you disaster recovery, replication between clusters, and also additional features that we layer on top of the policy engine. So enterprise is targeted at serious users. Enterprise is targeted at, we used to have this diagram of again, single user, small groups to small, medium business, and now multi-tiered enterprise organizations. Now, the tricky part about this, obviously, is complexity. Some people want to use our products. They don't want to set them up, right? Okay, I want to use Vault. I don't want to learn how to set up a Vault cluster or maintain it. And I also don't want to worry about the backups, the SLA snapshots, etc., right? We've had fully supported customers call us after an outage and they haven't run backups. Who hasn't had that happen, right? So the good news is, manage my infrastructure for me. So HashiCorp as a service. And there's 2 varieties of this again. So in the case of Terraform, being a tool, right, we have Terraform Cloud. So we have an actual SaaS management platform around Terraform. And if you think of Terraform as a CLI, right, Terraform open source is a CLI, much like Git is a CLI. You do a Git command manually on the CLI to manage your code. Terraform Cloud is then our analogy of GitHub. So you can think of it like that. So yes, I've got got a code repo locally. I'm using Git to manage it, to do my commits locally. I may be committing it to a local replica of whatever code VCS solution I'm using. Terraform Cloud is going to do the same for Terraform. So I may be doing some Terraform locally. I'm going to need to push it up to some central platform that is managing my team, my workflows, my credentials, right? So I don't have to have my credentials for AWS stored locally on my laptop. I'm editing my code either in GitHub or in a private VCS repo, GitHub Enterprise, GitLab, or Bitbucket, one of the Bitbucket offerings. Those commits are automatically triggered in Terraform Cloud. I can show who did it, when, what code commit level they were at. And there's a full audit trail, right? So I can't go and then cover my tracks. And this is what enterprises need, right? And again, Terraform Cloud, we say is analogous to GitHub. That's also in the pricing model, right? So Terraform Cloud itself is free. Anybody who wants to go use Terraform Cloud can do so. Anybody that wants the enterprise features can then pay a small subscription fee on top of that based on how many users you have. And essentially how much consumption you'll be doing of Terraform Cloud. Now, one thing we have for people who need a bit of a hybrid approach, again, so maybe you're managing some AWS resources with a team, you're using Terraform Cloud, You also need to be able to manipulate that local resource you were talking about, like an F5 or an on-premise application that you need to consume a cloud resource from. Now, obviously, Terraform Cloud is a SaaS. You're not going to want to expose your public network to a SaaS. So you're not going to want to have Terraform Cloud reach through your private network to manipulate your resources for you. What we have for that is Terraform Cloud agents. So down here, you deploy a container or a VM that will then synchronize with our SaaS. Again, using your firewall as an egress, not an ingress. And then this will pull down events, run Terraform locally, just as it would in the cloud, keeping the full audit trail, and then give you the ability to manage private resources. Okay, so this is one of the enterprise-only features that we have. Now, if I shift a little bit and go back to HashiCorp Cloud Platform, and I'll give a quick tour, I think, at the end, if we have time here. I get push button deployments. Again, these are our services. So Terraform was a tool. Terraform Cloud is a platform around the tool. HashiCorp Cloud Platform is a push button deployment of our services. So you're not just using a global vault that we have running, you're getting your own vault cluster, right? You're getting your own Consul cluster in AWS. And in my opinion, one of the best things about that is that it's fully supported, and you don't have to question about sales. If you have a small team of 3 people, you don't have to deal with enterprise sales process and quotes. You can just go out with your credit card, even if you want, and get a deployment, evaluate the enterprise offerings. And again, small teams get billed as much as they use, so it often doesn't cost very much. You don't have to do the typical quote process of how much Vault do you think you'll be using, how much Consul do you think you'll be using, and then issue a license accordingly. So use it as long as you want it, and we'll talk about the bridging that we offer with a HVN, HashiCorp Virtual Network, that is able to abstract your cloud network away, so you can peer it to a VPC if you want. You can also consume it from your on-premise environments again. You get control over access to it. And then you have the one workflow across all clouds. So again, these are all featured in our Terraform providers, so you can control these with Terraform. You can add them to an existing workflow or existing workspace. And I'll show you how in the near future. Now, important little part here, you see Vault and Consul, but remember I mentioned Packer. So down here we have Packer. So HCP Packer registry. If you are using Packer to build parallel images across either a hybrid or multi-cloud, right? Maybe you're using one image description to build VMware, one image description to build in AWS, and make sure they're in sync. It's up to you to manage the record of that, right? We have never had a registry that says, okay, here's your past 10 images built with Packer. Now we're going to have this great integration where HCP will keep track of your Packer images, your Packer build history, and Terraform will integrate it with it. So Terraform plan, always fetch the latest, and essentially use that as a single point of reference for all your images. Because oftentimes in our larger customers, we'll have someone that's building Packer images in team A, someone that's building separate Packer images in team B. They're all doing the same thing multiple times, right? We've got redundant image building. Here we'll have a centralized registry of all that to keep it straight. Now, I don't think, actually this isn't live yet. Packer image registry is in the near future. And I don't know the pricing model yet. It's not very expensive, right? Because again, we're not storing the images for you, we're storing the records. So obviously you're not going to push an image into HCP and consume it from AWS. You're going to build your image in AWS, and we're going to keep track of that metadata for you. So again, it's a very lightweight service, but it's a simple service that is really powerful in what it gives you. Okay, so back to the original kind of, we call our cloud operating model or cloud migration strategy. You've got your images managed, you've got your infrastructure deployed and controlled. With Terraform, you've got your security with Vault, your networking and service discovery with Consul. Now, one thing that we don't show up here is the other products. So if you look back at the original product list, it went down to Nomad, which is our scheduler and orchestrator, and almost what I would consider the HashiCorp operating system. We also have the two newer projects, Boundary and Waypoint. And if you've ever heard of them, if you've not heard of them, the 10,000-foot overview is that Boundary is an identity-based access manager, right? So if you have ever used a PAM solution for privilege escalation, like give me access to this resource for a half an hour. Those are often targeted at IP addresses and finite resources that are traditionally defined in a data center, right? Boundary is great that it's going to give you that flexibility to say, give me access to this cloud resource. Let me authenticate by an external method, and then give me the access good for half an hour, right? And this applies to things like SSH, database connections, whatever you might traditionally do with an SSH tunnel. But you don't have to worry about what the IP address is, right? You don't have to worry about where the other endpoint is, because again, you're in a cloud and things are dynamic. Now, shifting to Waypoint. Waypoint is our super simple deployment tool, multi-environment deployment tool. So it is a super easy YAML pipeline engine to say, okay, deploy this container across 3 environments, deploy this across my my EKS at the same time as a local VM. And that is a tool that is designed to be, I should say a service, that is a service that is designed to be open source only. So what I would like to do is find my other window 1 second, and enough talk, right? Let me see some actual demo. So this is portal.cloud.hashicorp.com, and if anybody goes to this, I get a free account. I have to authorize this every time. I'm not sure why. Oh, because we have a complicated authorization via GitHub and Okta. Anybody who signs up to this gets a $50 credit. Obviously no remaining credits. We have a multi-tenant organization. So here I will use this organization. It says overview to create a Consul cluster, deploy Vault, my cost summary, and this is a free organization, so no billing. See, there's no Packer here yet. Any week now, I suppose, I'm expecting to see Packer show up in here. But it is roadmap for the very near future. So example, deploy Vault. I get to pick a cluster ID, whatever I'm going to call it. I get to pick, create a HVN. Well, we've already got an HVN, HashiCorp Virtual Network, that covers London. And then I will pick development. So now billing is super cheap. Oh yeah, sorry, feel free to ask questions if anybody has any questions. Development environments, super cheap. I think they cost about 1/10 of what a production would. So if anybody wants to just try out a development cluster, go ahead. It provides all the same monitoring features, single node cluster only, but for evaluating Vault, it's straightforward and simple. Now, standard cluster, again, you get an HA cluster, you get all the full SLA with support of a normal Vault deployment on your own, and it bills a little bit more. But look at this, I mean, 4.5 cents an hour. This is the greatest way to get started with Vault in a supported way, right? There's no playing guess the price. Right? You don't have to sort out quotes. It's self-billing. This covers the AWS resources required, right? So AWS gets paid by us for the VMs created, any of the resources created, and then you just get the one bill on top, right? So it's super straightforward. I have this option to allow public connections. Again, I wouldn't recommend that, but when I do this, we then automatically on the back end start a Terraform apply. And again, you can obviously do this with Terraform. You can create your own. My cluster will initialize, and then I can go and use it accordingly. Now, while that's running, I can also take a look at Terraform Cloud. Right? Remember, Terraform Cloud is a little bit different. It's been around for quite a while, actually. If you've done any of our public workshops, our free workshops, we do have Terraform Cloud on AWS Workshop if anybody wants to try it out. In fact, I think there's one in the next week or so on American time, on Eastern US time. So if anybody wants to do an evening with Terraform Cloud, again, free, super helpful. I've got what looks like simple Terraform, open source. I've got a full audit trail though here of all the runs that are being done. In fact, it looks like Andre is doing a destroy right now. I can see what my team is doing and when. So here he's triggered a destroy run from the UI. I can see exactly what GitHub commit is based on. And I can in fact click through to see that. Okay, so he's changed some load balancer resources. He's changed an AWS Route 53 record. Okay, super straightforward. Time stamped, which is great for the auditors and a big four. I can see just like the open source plan is finishing, everything it's going to destroy. And if the plan fails, I will stop there, right? If there's something wrong with my syntax or something wrong with the job running, just like Terraform open source, it will stop. We also have cost estimation enabled, right? So, okay, he's going to destroy ALB, some instances. He's going to save an estimated $835 a month using the public pricing, right? So if anybody has a private AWS pricing agreement, we do offer Terraform Enterprise, which is the private or on-premise version of this, which most European customers tend to use. And you get to enter your own credentials for AWS to quote your plan, right? So we take the plan. It's great that AWS gives us the API endpoint to pipe a plan through and tell you exactly what's going to change the cost-wise. Now, if you've never used this before, it's great. It's also not a guarantee. These are estimates. And things like autoscale groups obviously are impossible to quote, right? There's no guarantee that an autoscale group will cost a consistent amount. So these are estimates. You can also control budgets based on a policy, right? So again, enterprise feature, we have our governance layer and Sentinel to say, here's a policy where AWS instance size list must be followed. So you cannot deploy any extra large instances. You cannot deploy 1,000 Bitcoin miners on the company dime. We're going to restrict the AWS instance sizes in your plan. We're also going to restrict the cost by workspace type. So this is this doesn't have a production in the name, so we're going to consider that a development workspace. Okay, this just happens to pass the development budget. We're also going to enforce mandatory tags. Okay, who hasn't had the problem where someone deploys a bunch of resources in AWS and there's no tags, there's no sign of ownership, right? This is the fodder for Reaper bots. Oh, and there's a question in chat. Yes, the recording will be sent to email, I believe. Connor will send that out. Okay, so I've seen the policy run. Again, policy is code. And now the apply is happening. So we're doing a destroy. Okay, so the great thing is if I'm a manager, and this is my team, I don't have to be an expert at Terraform. I can see what everybody's doing. I can track their budgets. And I can also see now with our overview, things like outputs. Okay, well, maybe we have a database team that's outputting a Postgres resource or some database in the cloud. They can then export that to other workspaces and other teams that can use them, right? So I can do a data source lookup, an external resource, maybe a DNS record, and use that accordingly. And then I can also have those workspaces trigger. So, okay, somebody in the network team changed a VPC. That should trigger a reapply on all of my dependent workspaces. Okay, so variables as well. The good news is you get a vault built into this, right? So things like secret keys, those are write only. So you essentially put them into vault. Nobody's able to fetch those out except for the Terraform run, the Terraform job itself. Okay, and in the very near future, roadmap includes having Vault generate a one-time use AWS credential. So say, do my plan, do my apply, create a new credential for it, and throw it away afterwards. Make sure it's revoked. Okay, so I get this great overview of multi-tenant, right? Multi-organization, multi-workspace, who's doing what and when. And again, this is meant to be free, right? So anybody can go get a free organization. I think you have a limit of up to, I forget how many workspaces. Actually, you should know that by now. But again, the events page, a bit of a plug for Connor. Upcoming events, this is gold, right? So this is, everything here is free. And we now have APJ regions as well. So Intro to Vault workshop. Where is Terraform Cloud? Terraform Cloud on AWS. Okay, July 22nd. Anybody that wants to do these, they're free. Everybody gets their own session on our Instruct platform, so you don't have to worry about having a supported technology stack. If you want to try it out, it's a great way to get up and running. And we also have Terraform open source on AWS too. In fact, these are the workshop slides that we use. So we have Terraform Cloud on AWS, Terraform open source on AWS. All of these are half days. Anybody that wants to try them out, go ahead. If you just do it on your own time, you won't get your own invite for Instruct. You can do it in your own resources though, no problem. Okay, so introduction to all of the products, introduction to Vault, which is again platform agnostic and cloud agnostic. So if you're just new to Vault, try that out. You can do this with HCP. In fact, one of the things we're doing this week is a colleague and I are trying to develop an HCP, HashiCorp Cloud Platform workshop that we can do for people as well. Going on to Consul. Consul is evolving quite a bit. So we've added, I think, 2 or 3 of these in the last 2 months. If you are in the networking space, definitely give us a shout. Again, you can get Consul up and running in AWS with the click of the HCP. And I should go back to here. This is still creating. All right, but then ideally, if I have a hybrid environment, I may have multiple multiple Consul clusters, multiple Vault clusters. Maybe if I have a dev Vault cluster and a production Vault cluster, all of that's visible here. I get a single billing summary, which is great. And again, there's no playing poker, I guess, with the sales organization to say how much Vault are you using. That tends to be the most existential question that we get in sales at HashiCorp. How much will I need? Like, well, yeah, you have to bill based on how much you need, but we don't know how much you need until you're using it, right? So this is a great way to say, okay, bill exactly what you need, and you find out that it's not very much, right? People find that they get a lot less apprehensive about using enterprise when they can see how cheap it is here. All right. Are there any questions? Any other questions?
Hey, John. So we just have another question that's come through, and it's about Terraform landing zones. So we've had someone that's heard the term previously, but are you able to explain a bit about what those are?
I am a bit, yeah. So this is something that we announced at HashiConf, I believe 2 years ago. And there is a code base for AWS landing zones with Terraform. It was largely built by AWS, along with some code reviews by HashiCorp. The only problem right now is that it's dated. So it is about 2 years old. And AWS is actually rebuilding that from scratch right now and working with us in the US, our alliances team in the US. So yes, there will be a refreshed Terraform landing zone code base. In the meantime, the existing code base is pretty much deprecated because it's basically 2 years old. So yes, if you're going to use that, stick around soon. And Siva, hopefully we'll have an announcement about that as well. And not personally, I don't think you're personally in charge of it, but jointly, I think we'll have an announcement, hopefully from the Alliances team in the next couple of months when that comes out. Does that help? Yeah, I wish I could just share the existing code base, but the fact is a lot of it is stale at this point. So AWS is doing a great job of rebuilding that from scratch.
So, okay, well, John, Siva, thank you so much for that session. It doesn't look like we've got any other questions that have come through. So with that, we'll conclude today's session. But if you do want to learn a bit more about our products, I really encourage you to check out our new Learn site, which you can find at learn.hashicorp.com. And we've got a ton of self-paced tutorials over all of our products that you can go through in your own time. So also just a reminder, this webinar was recorded and we'll share that with you via email in the next 24 hours. But with that, I really hope you enjoyed today's webinar and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.